Hey guys, it's Nathan from the Kentucky Cycling YouTube channel. Welcome to the next Zoom interview in the Kentucky Cycling Connection series. I'm excited to introduce my guests today, who are Mike Sewell and Sharon Brown from Bike Walk Kentucky. Mike and Sharon, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Hey, good morning.
Thank you all for being here. So why don't we just start by having each of you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background, including your role with Bike Walk Kentucky.
Hey, my name is Mike. I have been an advocate in the Commonwealth of Kentucky for multimodal kind of safety issues for a long time. So my background is I'm an engineer, so I'm responsible for designing a lot of the facilities that we see in the urban settings. And then when you get outside of the urban settings, we transition typically to trails and things like that, which I think is a great opportunity for families to see how fantastic it is to move around without a car. So a lot of my career has been focused on just balancing uses in the right of way and keeping people safe. And then when I really started investing myself in bicycling and micromobility as a true form of transportation, it started clicking with me that we were not doing near enough to advocate for these users. I think that the role that Bike Walk Kentucky plays here is a very important one. You know, advocating for people that don't have a voice. There's a lot of equity issues, not only in our state, but in all the surrounding states as well. People depend on these forms of transportation, not just people like me that do it out of choice for leisure, but it's an important role that we have to play. And so making sure that we're educating folks about the dangers, because there is dangers associated with it. There's risks associated with doing this, but there's also a whole lot of positive benefit and effect that we can have, not only on our personal mental well-being, but also in the economies that we surround ourselves with. So that's a high-level introduction to why I'm here and why I believe that this is an important platform. And once again, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to us and letting us share our stories.
Thank you, Mike. What about you, Sharon?
Yep, and I'm Sharon Brown, and my husband and I moved to Kentucky 24 years ago. And when I moved to Kentucky, I became a cyclist because it is such a absolutely gorgeous, beautiful place to ride. So, and quickly made a lot of friends biking. So I've been biking since I've moved here, and I'm a professor at Transient and Health and Exercise Science. And one of the things I've done with my teaching is I have taken students abroad cycling. So I've taken groups of students cycling in southern France, which I team taught with a French professor. And more recently, I've been team teaching with a colleague in economics, Alan Bartley, teaching a course bringing students to the Netherlands. In fact, Mike was on our last trip a year ago, where we actually had our students pack up all their things in panniers and cycle around the Netherlands and learn about infrastructure and a healthy lifestyle. And I've also been involved with Transy Bikes, our program on campus, which brought me to getting involved with the Bike Walk Kentucky Summit that we held in Lexington in 2018. And I was part of the planning committee for that. Mike was on that committee as well. And one of the goals of the Bike Walk Summit was to help bring voices together to create a conversation with the hope of having an outcome of a statewide organization. So we are one of the few states in the US that has been without a statewide advocacy and education group. So with a year worth of planning, I would do a shout out to Wanda Bertram, who really helped usher this organization together. We worked hard on board development, creating a strategic plan, and electing a president, Mike Sewell, as our first inaugural president for Bike Walk Kentucky. So we're really pleased to get it off the ground this year, and we're anxious to connect with people all across Kentucky to improve cycling for everybody.
Well, that is a great introduction on both your all's parts. I have to say, it's kind of like on the Up movie where the dog, Doug sees squirrel. You know, when you said like the bike touring thing, I was like, whoop, you know.
Right.
So I'm curious, Mike, you were you auditing that class, or did you just get a special invite because your connection to Sharon? And how does one get involved with that?
I was going to say, it started with a question just like yours to Sharon. I was like, this seems like a pretty cool thing. But Sharon asked me to come along and just basically assist. It's a big group of students that are all interested in different aspects of bicycling infrastructure. So there were some that were business students, there were some that were health and well-being, there were, economists, business students, and all of those different things were touched through the discussions that they held over the course of 2 weeks, traveling basically 230 miles across the Netherlands to different cities. So it was a really great opportunity. It was very interesting to see how they were gravitating towards certain topics just because of their background. So that's how it happened. Now that was definitely a life-changing thing. It's a very eye-opening, but I still love Sharon to death for allowing me to tag along.
Well, and I have to compliment Mike because he also taught several class sessions for us with his expertise and background. And we also had a really great opportunity to work with the Dutch Cycling Embassy in the Netherlands. So when we were in Delft, we had several hours of lectures from them. And also we had a 2.5 or 3 hour bike tour to look at how they design work. And we have lots of stories about that, including something as simple as they don't use a lot of signs. They actually do things in the way they build that helps people change their behavior, that makes it safer for everybody. So really fascinating to learn about, see another culture's experience with cycling. And we're heading in that direction, right, Mike?
Absolutely, I hope so.
Well, great. Sorry for the digression there. It was definitely, I was like, whoa, that sounds really cool. And I'm sure an experience that those will stay with those students for the rest of their lives. So it's really, really awesome. Sharon mentioned that she was a cyclist. Mike, are you also a cyclist? And if so, can you all tell us just a little bit about how you got into cycling and what kind of cycling you like to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I am a daily bike commuter. I do have a car, but I don't touch it. It's been parked in the road for months and months. My real investment in bicycling came from me starting to bike commute when the I-64 bridge was shut down. If you remember that, in Louisville. So I live in Louisville, but my commute time in my car just more than doubled. And one day I was just extremely frustrated. And I decided to abandon my car and walk to work because I had literally not moved. And then I kept seeing these bicyclists pass me, and I was like, it was bad, honestly. I was not in the right frame of mind. I was really angry at them because they had figured this out and I had not. And so the next day I decided to try to bike. I was going to put it in my car because I was out of shape. I was not near the shape that I'm in today. And so I put it in my car and decided as soon as I hit traffic, I was going to get the bike out and bike the rest of the way. And I have never looked back. It's just one of those things where I started to enjoy myself so much more. I was in a way better mood when I got to work. I can be a bear, just to deal with because I have a very stressful job. I'm an engineer for Gresham Smith. We run a fairly large transportation practice, among other things, but I'm responsible for active transportation. I'm director of active transportation firm-wide now. And it's a stressful job, winning work, keeping people busy, keeping people gainfully employed and families fed is tough. And I found that cycling was a great release for me. I got to work, I was more focused. It's just, I'm better prepared to handle the stress of my job by choosing to bike commute. So that's the high level introduction to me, yes.
Very good. Sharon, what about you?
I have 3 bikes in my garage. I have a road bike, which is probably my primary interest in cycling. But that said, I also have a hybrid, which I like to ride around town and commute when possible. Run errands on my bike. I've got little baskets on the back. And also have a mountain bike too, which I'm absolutely in love with. I've done a couple of women's mountain biking clinics in Frankfurt over the past couple of years, I'm fell in love with mountain biking, and I love bike touring, of course, too. So I come from I think every size and shape of bike. My general motivation has always been around health and fitness and lifestyle. So that's kind of my angle into it. And I just hope everyone has access to being healthy in the state of Kentucky.
Cool. And I think Mike kind of talked about this a little bit in his introduction, but tell me, at least Sharon and Mike, if you want to add anything, feel free, a little bit about your journey from becoming a cyclist to moving to becoming an advocate.
I think just because I'm a teacher, I think I found my way into advocacy because it's part of what I value and believe is to help other people learn about ways to be healthy. And also I just met so many lovely people in Kentucky that have really spread a lot of enthusiasm and people I want to hang out with, and learn from and sort of model after. So Bill Gorton has been a key player, I think, in the state to help nurture young advocates, help providing them platforms and opportunities, encouraging people to apply for Paul and I grants out of the Kentucky Bike and Bikeways Commission. I think that has opened a lot of doors to people connecting and also people creating opportunities for people to get involved with biking. So I hope I answered your question. I think just I'm a teacher. And I like working on teams and being with other people and helping people learn to be healthy.
Cool. And Mike, you mentioned somewhat about your journey into it, but did you want to add anything more to that?
Sure, I can. And I mentioned the engineering part really played a big role. You start to pay way more attention to the types of infrastructure that we're designing and the decisions that we're making. A lot of that is coordination with the municipal agencies. So Louisville, Lexington, Bowling Green, Northern Kentucky, a lot of people are in responsible charge for making decisions on infrastructure. And most of them are not, multimodal transportation, even planners. And so I knew that there was a role for us to play on that front, but then also, and Sharon mentioned this too, but in the state of Kentucky, we have a really good opportunity. It's really pretty here. And so making sure that we engage folks like the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, who is in direct control of our state transportation funding and a lot of our surface transportation funds via local NPOs. And we've got some really good folks at KYTC that are starting to understand the importance of this, not only for local economies, but also just for safety. We have to do a better job of keeping folks safe that are using public infrastructure. And I really think because of a lot of what we're talking about, I think a lot of people are really starting to pay more attention. I think we're making better decisions in our right of way. All of that brings, I've gotten very involved with the League of American Bicyclists, so I sit on their board of directors as well.
Oh, that's great.
And that's a really fun outlet too, because you're directly tied to what's happening at a national level. And so we get to garner a lot of cool things other states are doing, and we can apply those. And one of the good things and the bad things about us coming to the game so late with a statewide organization is we have a ton of lessons learned. We can skip a lot of the missteps that other states made. And to echo what Sharon mentioned, Wanda Bertram has been such a huge help, and Sharon and others too that were on the early levels of the planning. They really weeded through a lot of that information. So we had the best of the best ideas, and we kind of have a streamlined mechanism now for formulating this, which we're only a few months in, but at the same time, I think we have a leg up on a lot of other states that still don't have this organization. So there's that.
Do you know that Mike is also on the Town Branch project in downtown Lexington?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's one of his projects.
Yeah,
good deal.
Well, I got lots of cool projects we can talk about. I was the consultant side project manager for that, which just went to construction, I think last month.
I'll post a little link to a talk that Keith Loven did, kind of presenting more information. He did that to a pedaling for a purpose presentation on that, but at a very high level. For those who may not know about the Town Branch project, do you want to just quickly say something about that?
Sure. A lot of cities are going through this, especially the size cities that Lexington are, but trying to reimagine, reinvigorate their urban cores, which It was surprising to me, honestly, when because I opened an office in Lexington as well for my firm, probably three years ago. I can't remember, but the cost of office space downtown, it's some of the lowest that we've seen in any of our office locations. And that's, I mean, it's great news for me opening a business, but it's also not great news for Lexington. It means that there's not a lot of cool stuff happening downtown. Now, I spent a lot of time in Lexington. Sharon lives right down the street from this project. I love Lexington. There's neat restaurants, there's some cool things downtown, but it's not got the density, it's not got the vibrancy that a lot of other cities its size has. And so the intent is to create some buzz around reallocation of right-of-way space into kind of a linear park where people can really enjoy themselves. They typically have a hugely positive benefit on net revenue generation, tax base for cities. So that means other good things, that investment now in a project for the city of Lexington could turn into substantial amounts of net revenue increase for them in tax base in 5 and 10 years down the road, which will be a recurring thing. So it's an awesome investment for them. But it's basically a way for people to be Dutch in downtown Lexington. You can bike all the way through. It connects to Keith Levin probably mentioned the trail system they have. There's a missing piece of that through the urban core in Lexington. This fixes that, so people can bike to downtown from all the way out in Fayette and even Jessamine counties and get to downtown Lexington. That's a pretty cool thing. And I really hope that, as Sharon mentioned too, you know, her eyes were open when she saw how beautiful this part of the country is. It's going to make it safe for families to get out and experience this as well.
Is it correct to say that it's also going to connect up to the Legacy Trail?
It is, yes. And so it's kind of where all of these trails have come to the edge of Lexington's urban core. They kind of stop. Trust me, it's not just Lexington that struggles with this. Louisville is struggling with it, and we're getting ready to do another cool project for them. You hit these streets and they're tough. You know, they're state routes. It's typically very congested. You have to make tough decisions to reallocate space, and it's just way easier to throw your hands up and say, we got it here and goodbye, and not really tackle the tough things. And so this was a good opportunity to come in and really do a good fix that's going to make it prettier, that's going to make it safer, and hopefully creates a platform for other cool development to go on in Lexington.
Well, very good. Between the two of you guys are both have your hands in a lot of different things, and I feel like the temptation here is to go in 1,000 different directions as far as various bike projects go. But so what I thought I'd do is actually share my screen and bring, everybody's mentioned Wanda Bartram, so I'll bring her up and say thank you, Wanda, for making the connection with Mike and Sharon. But she also provided me a talking points document for Bike Walk Kentucky. So maybe this will help focus us on Bike Walk Kentucky itself, and we'll kind of dig into this. So what is Bike Walk Kentucky?
Okay, so it's basically an advocacy organization to make sure that we can better support good decisions being made that will affect biking and walking in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And that's going to take on many forms, and you see here too at the bottom left, we have to be all inclusive with the decisions we're making, because a lot of these decisions have different, there's different value propositions in each of the decisions that are made. So making sure that we look at these things through different lenses to make sure that it's the right decision that's going to support the most amount of people is key. And so when we say advocacy, it's basically this united front, because different cities will need different things out of the decisions that are made for multimodal users. So making sure that we have toolkits that basically we can take to a small town, and that still translates into some of our larger, more, our profit centers. That's going to be an important thing. It's just a united front. And there's also a lot of education and promotion that's rolled into this as well, because people like us three, we understand the benefits, it just makes sense to us. But if you go into a very car-centric neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, it's very difficult to communicate the importance of this. And so making sure that we are not only promoting better decisions that are made with our budgets, but also promoting in general just the healthy activities and lifestyles that we can start shedding light on by making better decisions. And ultimately, the easiest hook here is making sure that people clearly understand the economic benefits. Mm-hmm. If you have local policymakers that and we have them here in Louisville, and I get it, but people don't understand that this is important. If you show them the economic benefits, it's very hard to argue with a lot of the good information we'll be pushing out. That's kind of my high level. Sharon, I'm sure I've missed some things. So.
No, I think you did a terrific job. I would just add that we're eager to work with a lot of organizations that are already in place. And Nathan, we're happy to be on your show and also to meet you because you've done a lot of work for the state too. So we're hoping our networks can work together as well. And in particular, we've had conversations with Vince Carmen, who's now the director of Kentucky Bike and Bikeways Commission. That's an organization out of Frankfurt that's housed in the transportation department. So that organization's been in place for many years, really over 10 years. I mean, it's maybe 20 years in operation. We want to partner with them. We want to help do work that complements what their goals are, and they're eager to support us as well. We want to promote their education and safety work. We want to work with a lot of existing organizations, the Public Health Office in Kentucky. We're hoping to have partnership agreements with a lot of organizations and be a central hub, I think, for all the conversation that Mike, points that Mike just mentioned.
Well, and for those of you who may not be familiar with the Kentucky Bicycle and Bikeways Commission, they're the folks behind the Share the Road license plate. So when you purchase your Share the Road plate, that money goes to them, and then they actually do grant awards for various projects throughout the state. So important work there. And I love when there's a shout out to Vince. Vince is a really great guy. He's sort of an unsung hero for bicycling throughout the state. Really awesome connection to know. So I had the benefit of attending the Kentucky Bike Walk Summit. I see that it's referenced here in 2018, and a major focus at that summit was there were a lot of discussion about, at that time, Kentucky did not have a statewide advocacy organization. And so can you all just kind of walk me through the timeline that's laid out here? What happened between the Bike Walk Summit up until today to get the formation of this organization?
Sure, I'll be happy to talk about that. I will say that we've actually had a couple of previous attempts for a state organization, so we're not the first. I keep saying we're the first, and we're hoping we're the longest lived. This idea has been percolating in the state in lots of different places among lots of different people for a good amount of time. So I think the summit really helped bring everybody together and say it's time now. The time's right. So many good things are happening in the state around cycling, mountain biking, right? Every kind of cycling, urban riding, infrastructure, road cycling. So the time seemed really perfect. I'm convinced that the time was right for this to happen and to launch successfully. So after the summit, Wanda Burcham, who was a significant volunteer and leader of the summit, one of the things that she did with her Bike Talk radio show was interview all of our national keynote speakers. And one of those interviews was our invited speakers of other presidents of their state organizations. We invited New York and South Carolina's directors to help facilitate a conversation for us about how to get started with the state organization. She interviewed them. She got also very interested in the idea and all that energy at the summit to let's make this happen. And she said, how can I help? Wanda has started 2 nonprofits in the past, and I have never started a nonprofit. I don't know, Mike, maybe you have. I've never created a board. In fact, I've only been on one board. I don't even know how to be a board member. But Wanda's expertise and her energy and her willingness to help lead us and literally lead us step by step to how to make this happen. Because again, why we're here, because of her work. So she and I partnered and did a lot of work on putting together a strategic planning committee. We had 20 different people from across the state with a variety of different voices, expertise, experiences, motivations around cycling and walking. They all came to the table in Kentucky, in Lexington. Some had dialed in, but we had amazing attendance for that. There were 5 sessions, I believe, went from January of 2019 till end of March, early April. As a result of that, we created a strategic plan. Again, this was a lot of volunteer work by a lot of leaders in Kentucky. And we're really pleased with the strategic plan. In fact, at our first board meeting, one of the things we did was to sort of adopt them, and we unanimously voted to help bring those strategic plans to life. After the strategic plan was in place, Wanda and I helped create board profile, like what we're looking for, and created applications with sort of the description of expectations around being a board member. So with the help of Keith Lovin and Joy Brown in Moorhead, we put together applications. We received a number of applications from all over the state. We selected that board last December, so December of 2019. Once we selected the board, we, again, having state representation, we asked Mike, unanimously was chosen to be our president. So I called Mike, which was super talented and super busy. And so I'm grateful that he agreed to lead us these early years in this development of the organization. And from there, we had our first board meeting in, was it January, late January, early February? So we're literally just off the ground. But I think the process has been deliberate. And I think it's been strategic. And we've also had support from a number of organizations, if I can shout out to them. Kentucky Bikes and Bikeways Commission with the Paul and I grant. We had funding along the way. They were helping us launch this as well with a grant. We had Moorhead Tourism made a donation. The Bluegrass Cycling Club also made a donation. And those were funds to help us just get to where we are now from the summit here. So it did take quite a bit of work, but I'm super, super excited. Again, thanks for having us so we have a chance to tell
absolutely. And you guys have been hard at it. I mean, it sounds like there's quite a bit of heavy lifting going on just to kind of get to this sort of formative, stage in the organization. So you have been able to form a board of directors, and looks like they bring a lot of varied areas of expertise to the table. So I wonder if you would just kind of walk us through who's on your board, speak to some of that diversity. What are their different areas of expertise that they actually bring to the table, both in terms of professional expertise, but also geographic distribution throughout the state.
Okay. And so Keith Lovin is a great multimodal advocate. He works at LFUCG for the city of Lexington. He's responsible and the project manager for multiple different multimodal focused projects. And he's also a local advocate. So he's kind of an unsung hero regionally for multimodal, and then making those good decisions like I was mentioning on our projects. He's also a daily bicycle commuter. So we wanted to make sure that we've got people that really believe in this mode of transportation. And Keith is definitely a believer. So fantastic addition to the executive committee. Joy Brown out of Moorhead, a lot of her work is focused on tourism. Moorhead is an absolutely gorgeous area of Kentucky, and a lot of her work has been centered on making sure that people understand how pretty it is down in Moorhead, and then pulling people in to experience their trail systems. She's just gotten through a bicycle planning effort. A lot of it is dealing with tourism, and we thought that would be a neat aspect to add. And Joy is also extremely detail oriented. So it's very helpful to have a Joy that not only understands the benefit of multimodal, but she's also on it. You know, she can generate a lot of good information, and she stays on top of things. It's just fantastic.
Before you go on to the next person, so I just wanted to mention, I recognize her name right off. She's definitely a mover and the shaker, and it's been a few years since it's happened, but back when there was a Bike Moorhead, ride. I did a video interview with Ched Krause, who was the organizer of that ride, but Joy was very much a part of the mix and a big proponent for that. And just as a little shout out to the folks in Moorhead, I missed that ride. Very, very pretty ride. So anyway.
Alice Harris not only is a multimodal advocate, but she has a lot of experience with bookkeeping. So she was a really great choice for us. Mount Washington is a smaller community. We wanted to make sure that we had a lot of different, not only you mentioned geographic locations, but also talents represented here. And we thought that the addition of her was going to be just solid for Bike Walk Kentucky. As Sharon mentioned, it takes a lot of effort to get it off the ground, and folks that are applying their expertise and just business know-how to this is a critical aspect. And I think Alice helps us fill that. Members of the board, Sharon Brown. Oh my gosh.
Who is this Sharon person?
We could take the rest of the interview. I won't go on too much, but Sharon is just, she is this constant positive force for multimodal. And not only that, she's just a great person. So in her role at Transylvania, I love you, Sharon, but in her role at Transylvania University, not only is she carrying out her day-to-day activities, that she has to do, but she's also doing it by pushing the importance of multimodal. And I think in light of the pandemic, we're starting to get a better handle on how critical the educator's role is in all of our daily lives, and making sure that we're, the tide raises all ships. Sharon is that person. Sharon is doing that, and she's just, I can't say enough positive things about Sharon. So I love that she's on this call. I love that she's part of this, and it wouldn't exist without people like Sharon, Wanda, and Keith really being passionate about this and pushing it. So I really appreciate you, Sharon.
Well, and just to sing Sharon's praises a little bit more, for those who didn't have the opportunity to attend the Bike Walk Summit in 2018, I mean, what an impressive event! Talk about graduating to a whole nother level. When can we look forward to the next one? I mean, I just I want to do that all day, every day. That was such a great event, and it was up there at Transy's campus.
Thank you guys very much, and hopefully we'll have another Bike Walk summit in the next couple of years, I hope.
Yeah. Well, and just to brag on that a little bit too, since I go to a lot of these, I'm asked to speak at a lot of these. Kentucky's was by far the best. It had the best branding. It had the best platform. It was just, the energy was there. It was just such a cool event. And you mentioned the other states, and some of my national friends that were here were just blown away with the level of the caliber of our Bike Walk Summit. So fantastic.
That deserves a shout out also to Sandra Broadus and
Absolutely.
Sam Crankshaw, because they were the creative background for Bike Walk Summit, and also, Sandra's expertise of bringing in our keynote speakers. So they were crucial to that success.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And so, by the way, Sam Crankshaw, which Sharon mentioned, is also now pushing and trying to redesign our online presence. So our website will be done by the same mastermind that pulled together the Kentucky Bike Walk Summit graphics. So he's a fantastic talent.
Yeah, very good. So let's just pause there. So down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, we see this www.bikewalk.ky. So if you go out to that right now, you'll see a page that's under construction, but you have secured the URL, and there is website development that is slated. If somebody is actually looking for you guys right now, do you have like social media presence or anything like that presently?
We do have, I believe, Enjoy has created both Instagram and I believe Twitter accounts, and those are at BikeWalkKY. We can update actually that landing page of the website just to have our contact information. I think that would be a great addition. along with our mission for the under construction page. So we'll take care of that hopefully before this goes live. Okay, so Natalie Jones, she works at the University of Kentucky. This is someone that Sharon has known for a long time, but her focus is health, public health. So not only is Natalie invested in bicycling as more of a leisure activity, but she has a really good handle on how important this is in terms of public health. And so we believe that her expertise and her lending her time to this will help us kind of close the gap as we start to tackle education and outreach to these communities. Having someone like Natalie on board is going to be critically important as well. Austin Render, so he is one of the people behind the Bourbon County Burn, which is our big tourism event here. Now, he lives right across the river, but that's okay. Practically doable anyway. But Austin has done a really great job with just executing on a big tourism event. So he and his team at the Bourbon County Burn, which I think they just went through a rebranding, I think they renamed it. They have a really good handle on generating buzz. So they travel, they do a whole lot of really great things to raise awareness for their ride. And again, it kind of ties to that tourism, but making sure that folks like Austin and his team have a voice at the table that can lend their expertise and better prepare us for how to generate buzz about bicycling and pedestrian infrastructure and advocacy in Kentucky is going to be fantastic. Shane Tedder, also from the University of Kentucky, his focus has been one of sustainability, and he's also a huge local advocate. And we just got word right before this call that Shane is having to make the tough decision of rolling off the board, just because in light of the pandemic and his family's response, he really needs to focus on how to do what's best for his family, and he does not have a whole lot of time, unfortunately. So that will be something that we have to backfill and tackle during our next board meeting. But that's to be expected. You know, a lot of people, once they want to be involved, and they want to be involved by whatever means necessary, it's very easy to get excited. But at the same time, a lot of people are going through things now that we have to be sensitive about, and we want to make sure that we support people like Shane that want to be involved but don't necessarily have the time to be on the board. We want to make sure that there's allowances for them to continue to have touch points with us and to be involved. As Sharon mentioned, it's not what we want, it's what all of us want. We're kind of that aggregator and pass through for lots of different voices, and so there will be opportunities for Shane to stay connected. Randy Thomas is if you ever met Randy, he's one of those hardcore bicyclists. He lives in Midway, so he's always out on the road. He understands the fight, for especially rural ridership. And again, he understands too how great it is to ride in Kentucky. Randy and his wife, Pam, they have a lot of experience. She's a lawyer, and Randy obviously is tied to Pam too. So Randy can help coordinate a lot of the things that we have to have out of, becoming a nonprofit, filings and things like that. But also Randy just is an all-around positive force. If you've ever engaged with him, he's just, it's real even Steven, never upset, just, thoughtful and very process driven. So we're really lucky to have a person and personality like Randy.
And Asher, I should add that Randy Thomas and Sandra Broadus were the two that head up the strategic plan. They were the lead on that. So
yeah.
Very good. And is it, I think Randy just recently retired, so that sheet might need to be updated.
That means we can pile more things on him too.
That's what I think.
Right. You all are going to generate your own honeydew list for Randy.
That's right.
Good idea.
And the last one on the list, but definitely not least, is Blair Travis. So if you've not been to Culver City, there's a lot of really cool things happening down there. And so And she's also a very passionate advocate for multimodal. And so it's one of those things where she's living it. You know, she's going through a lot of the decision-making process and trying to find her bike legs, you know, in a small community. And they've done a lot of great things. And we want to better understand that struggle and that process so that when we go to other communities in Kentucky, you know, Blair's lessons learned and the things that she's just went through, we believe that there's a lot of translation that can occur to other folks. And a lot of her work is marketing and business outreach, things like that. And so again, that's going to be critically important as we start to get off the ground with Bike Walk Kentucky.
Very good. So you guys have spoken to a lot of seemingly a lot of your short-term goals has really been around the formation and the creation of this entity. Can you speak to some of the longer-term goals that the organization has?
Sure, I'll start, and then Sharon, if you want to pile on. The kind of midterm to longer term is really the execution of the strategic plan, and so there's some real focus areas of that, which is, you know, we need to establish an advocacy platform, how to pull people's ideas together and how to push those out. One of the education and also the education kind of roles in different components for tourism and other things. Making sure that there's the framework that we can not only pull in that information, but then push it out. Long term, we need to make sure that this has staying power. We all believe that this is the right thing to do, but we have to make sure that after I roll off and after Sharon rolls off, that this thing can continue to exist and do the important work that we need. And so we need to make sure that there is some form of financial stability associated with this platform. We need to make sure that we have subcommittees that can be engaged, because not everyone wants to or can serve on the board of directors for an organization like this. But we need different outlets that allow people to pop in, share good information, share their advocacy efforts, so that we can take it and disseminate it too. And so there's going to be a lot of work in the short term for just solvency. Making sure that we have framework, and then in long term, there's going to be lots of different outlets to continue kind of the foundational work that we need to accomplish.
Yeah, currently we have working groups under each of those 5 components of the strategic plan. So the boards are on different subgroups, and so we're prioritizing specific goals, like what's doable within a year, what's doable within 3, and what's doable in the next 5 years. And so we want to have some outcomes by the end of this year, right? So we want to have some progression, and we're finalizing and creating those particular priorities right now and putting them in the same. So we want to have something to show by the end of the year in terms of ways that we've helped promote cycling.
Well, very good. So I get the impression that you guys are very much a working board. What are some of your needs, or maybe opportunities in which others throughout the state might be able to support your work?
One of the ideas that Vince and I were talking about just last week, and Mike and I talked yesterday about, which we've seen in other state organizations, is they've developed ambassador programs across the state, where we can hopefully have people who love cycling, who want to promote it in their areas, for any of those, for education purposes, for tourism, for whatever their motivation around cycling, that they can be representatives all over the state, that we can all come together and go out into the community. So I think that communication is really important, and we'll need a lot of people on the ground that can help make those, have a network of communications. And also, you know, Vince and I were talking, we need to tell our stories, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we have ambassadors out there telling stories, and then listening to stories, we can share more of those stories in Kentucky. So that's something that I hope will hopefully be a framework we can set up. So we will be looking for volunteers for hopefully ambassadors in all the communities across Kentucky.
Cool. Are there other needs or ways that people might be able to plug in?
There will be, but again, I think we need to wait on the board subcommittees to kind of roll out what they envision. You mentioned us being a working board, and part of this too is making sure that we're not usurping any of the great ideas that our subcommittees come up with. So as we're fully empowering them to generate kind of a mini plan for how they see those things coming. But Sharon, I'm glad you mentioned that sharing of stories, because there's just so many great examples of people's lives being changed, for the good or for the worse if they've had a crash. Sharing those stories to making sure that we're really gravitating towards what's going to have the most impact, I think I love that you mentioned that, because that's where my mind went immediately. It's just, we have to make sure that we're capturing those and sharing those and pushing those out.
On October 8th and 9th in Owensboro, the KBBC is organizing an annual meeting, and Nathan, I know you're actually going to be one of the speakers for it. So save the date, October 8th and 9th. That's one way to get involved too, to come to that 2-day conversation and learn more and learn ways to get involved. And the Bike Walk Kentucky is going to have a presence at that meeting to kind of introduce ourselves again and to connect with people and see how we can help.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked you all about that you'd like to share with the Kentucky cycling audience?
I really appreciate people like you that are just in the process of communicating neat things that are occurring across our state. I checked out your YouTube channel, and there's just a lot of really great potential rides out there, that can occur. And I think until everyone is really aware of it, if you've never been on a bike, you're probably not going to search for cool YouTube channel like what you've got. And I'm hoping that an organization like what Sharon and Wanda and Keith and others have helped to create here will really start to open the doors so more people can search for cool channels like what you're pushing this out on. Because it's going to mean more to them if they have that personal example of them wanting to get out and bike and walk to some destinations, and take in our communities for what they have to offer at a people scale. I think that's a really cool thing that you've got pulled together, and I really appreciate you giving us a platform to talk about why we care about it.
Well, absolutely. I didn't start using the language of telling Kentucky cycling story until I had started having conversations with Vince, and I really think that is a big animating drive for me. I know personally, just to share, I mean, when I would go on a trip, I'm very audio visual focused, and so I would go to YouTube, and if I was thinking about going to ride somewhere, I kind of wanted to preview, get that area. And there are lots of videos for places like Sharon mentioned mountain biking. Like if you're going to like Western North Carolina, for example, you can find videos all over the place for trails and things down there. And the reality is that there are amazing resources right here in Kentucky, and we just haven't gotten very good yet. I think we're getting better at starting to tell that story about these resources. This whole Kentucky cycling effort is just really a passion project to try to help highlight those really amazing resources that we have here in the state of Kentucky.
You're awesome, Nathan.
Well, thank you. Well, if there's not anything else, I just want to thank you all both again for being a part of the Zoom interview series. And we look forward to watching this organization grow and develop as it continues to serve the advocacy of both. I know the emphasis I place here is on biking, but also walking in the state of Kentucky. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks again to Mike and Sharon from Bike Walk Kentucky for being guests in the Kentucky Cycling Connection series. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to stay tuned for more Zoom interviews in the coming weeks.